Josh, thanks. New concerns this morning on Capitol Hill as investigations continue into the use of classified documents by President Biden and former President Trump. The debt ceiling also prompting concerns. At 25 News Washington correspondent Joe St. George is there live. Joe, good morning. And what are the differences here between the investigations into President Biden and former President Trump's use of those documents, and how are they similar?
Yeah, good morning, Joey. First and foremost, I think it's important to remember that we're likely at the beginning of this investigation as opposed to the end. There's a special counsel involved that can sometimes be frustrating to journalists that we don't get as much information as we would like right away because there remains a lot of unanswered questions here. Why was there this delay between finding the documents in November and obviously this coming to public light in January? What were in the documents? Who had access to the areas where these documents were the last several years? We learned in the last 24 hours the Secret Service does not keep logs of President Joe Biden's personal home in Delaware. The White House says that's a private residence. That's not required by law, unlike the White House, which keeps pretty detailed records. You mentioned key differences here. I think we could pop up on screen if we haven't yet. Some of the differences here between former President Trump and Joe Biden. And first off, there's a lot of similarities. We're dealing with two presidents now who are being looked into by special counsels for possible violations of the Presidential Records Act, which is the federal law that says the records of administrations need to be handed over and done so carefully when a president leaves office. The National Archives is charged with keeping those records. But there is a difference here that the White House says is key when everyone is reporting on this, and they say that they were cooperating right away as soon as they realized that there was an error with this classified document, that they contacted the National Archives as opposed to the Trump situation in which the National Archives, based on legal documents, had to repeatedly contact former President Trump. That's a key difference, they say, and certainly shows a level of cooperation. Conservatives in Texas and elsewhere, certainly if you listen to talk radio, they say a big difference is the FBI and the fact that the FBI raided former President Trump's home in Mar-a-Lago, and there's been yet to be a large-scale search of a Biden property like that by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. So get ready, Joey. We're at the beginning of this. It's going to be several weeks and months of this. It's starting to feel like a big political issue, kind of akin to the Hillary Clinton emails, if you can remember, from several years back.
Oh, yeah. Everybody remembers. And, the U.S. expected also to reach the debt limit Thursday, Joe, sparking concerns among economists. But why is it such a concern, and what does that mean for us here at home?
Well, this could impact family finances. It could impact our country's economy. In a year in which a lot of CEOs on Wall Street are expecting a recession or a mild recession at the very least, we can put on screen some key dates. This Thursday is when the U.S. will reach its debt limit, its debt ceiling, but there's going to be no default this week. That's because the Treasury Department has said they're going to deploy extraordinary measures to keep the U.S. paying our bills, paying out benefits until sometime mid this year. We think it'll be before June, perhaps sometime in June. That date has yet to be determined. But that's key because the U.S. has, never defaulted on our debt. We've never not raised the debt ceiling. But there remains looming questions here in Washington of just how serious this debate's going to be this time. That's because Speaker McCarthy, in order to become Speaker, made some pretty key concessions to conservatives about spending cuts in order to raise the debt ceiling one more time. Democrats are already saying, we're not going to put any spending cuts on the table because our national debt is a bipartisan problem and we should deal with this issue in a bipartisan way. If the U.S. surpasses its debt limit, its debt ceiling, you're talking about impacts on military pay, impacts on Social Security benefits potentially. There's a lot to do here, and certainly it's going to rattle the markets in what's expected to be a pretty unique year, to say the least. So get ready. We have a political debate unfolding over classified documents, and we have an emerging economic policy debate that could certainly impact our economy later this year. We're going to be chatting about this issue for several mornings to come, Joey.
All right. So much going on there. We know you'll stay on top of it, Joe. Thanks. Joe St. George live from the Capitol Rotunda this morning in Washington. Meanwhile, today...